Burn after reading? Are you serious? Burn after reading? Gabby Petito, God rest her soul in heaven, Gabby Petito's parents insist a letter from Brian Laundrie's mother offered to help bury a body. Did you ever see the series Burn Notice? Did anybody in here ever see that? Okay, loved it. Where is that guy now? I love that guy.
Got a new show.
Got a new show. Burn Notice. That's what I thought of when I read the headline, Burn After Reading. Anything but that. Brian Laundrie's mother allegedly wrote a letter that said she would, quote, bring a shovel to help bury a body. I guess she's talking about beautiful young Gabby Petito. Now, this is according to a request filed by the lawyers for Gabby Petito's family. The letter's envelope actually said, burn after reading. Now, I'm curious as to how they know that. Joining me, high-profile lawyer out of the Jacksonville, Florida jurisdiction. And I love to talk to Dale Carson, not because he's a high-profile defense attorney. I hate that part. But I love that he is a former FBI agent and former cop out of Miami-Dade. Never a lack of business there. He's the author of Arrest Proof Yourself, and you can find him at dalecarsonlaw.com. But I do want to hear your legal expertise as well. This is his jurisdiction, and there are subtle distinctions in state law across our country. Every state law has a little something different. Like you'll notice in some jurisdictions, they don't call it murder one. Some jurisdictions, capital murder doesn't mean you're going to get the death penalty. There's all sorts of nuances, and Florida law is no exception. But can we just talk about these facts for a minute, Dale Carson? Now, this is being alleged by Gabby Petito's family, okay? So you've got to consider the source. They are heartbroken. They're devastated. They're never going to get their daughter back. And they are infuriated, Dale Carson, infuriated because they believe that Brian Laundrie, Gabby Petito's fiance, that his parents knew for days and days and days that Gabby was dead, and kept kind of stringing them along when they were writing and texting and trying to call Laundrie's parents, going, have you heard from Gabby? What's happening? And according to the Petito family, they not only wouldn't respond, but outright obstructed them finding out the truth. Now, that said, considering the source, it doesn't matter the source if this letter really exists. Repeat, on the outside of the envelope, according to the Petitos, it says, burn after reading. Somebody's been watching way too much Cloak and Dagger spy technique on TV. And inside, according to them, and I'm reading plaintiff's second request for production to defendant Christopher Laundrie, that's Brian Laundrie's family, they're asking about this letter. Okay, Dale Carson, hit it.
All right, so what has happened here is this is part of the notebook and personal possessions that were found on him when he died or killed himself. And the FBI, as we know, took custody of that information. It was all wet, and they recovered all that data. So clearly, he didn't follow his mother's advice to burn the document because it was recovered in its entirety.
Yeah, I'm sorry, but Dale, let me just refresh your recollection, as we say in court. Yeah, he was too busy to burn the documents because he was way too overloaded multitasking, trying to drive Gabby Petito's van, not his, her van, without her, using her credit card to buy munchies along the way, driving back home. Yeah, he was too busy to burn that document. Go ahead.
So that's why we have the entire document. And what the family is trying to do, actually the Petito family and Schmidt are trying to get that document to see whether or not it was written prior to the death or following the death. And it's rather evident to me that it was written before the death. Otherwise, he wouldn't have put it in his portfolio. So the difficulty here.
I don't agree with you. Why would she be talking about, I'll bring a shovel? Who says that?
Well, who puts burn this after reading on it?
Why would she even discuss that if Gabby was still alive? There's no need to, quote, bring a shovel. Hey, have you looked at the notebook? Because there are photos of the notebook. You can see it's a little waterlogged, but you can read it very well. Everything that he wrote.
Certainly. Yeah, it's true. And I mean, we now know that there's a confession. I mean, he clearly is the individual who did this. And the difficulty arises for the Laundrie family because the attorney representing them made a statement on the news that he believed she was still alive. He intimated that. And that's the basis, really, for the civil suit, which alleges that they suffered great emotional, grievous harm from the publication of that information when they knew that Gabby Petito was, in fact, no longer among the living.
This is actually set to go to trial in August of 2023. That's not that far away. So let me understand the nuances of Florida law. Do you believe that's a real trial date? Because from what I've seen of, well, I'm on the criminal side, but by the time I called for a jury panel, 60, 80 jurors, when the defendant would see those jurors starting to file in, take a long, hard look at him, suddenly they'd want a plea, a guilty plea. Now,
well, that's right.
I'm wondering
after the jury goes behind closed doors, oftentimes defendants will plead guilty when they look at the faces of the jurors.
So do you believe that's a real trial date? Is that really going to happen? Or is the Laundrie attorney going to say, oh, we need a further notice, we need a continuance, we're not ready? Well, they are. Why am I even asking that? Of course they're going to ask for a delay.
That's the effort, is to delay when you're on the defense side. But what they want to see is that letter. And if the court agrees that they should see that letter, because remember, it was turned back over to the Laundrie family after the Bureau recovered it and dried it out. So certainly when we see that letter, we're going to have a better understanding of how deeply the Laundrie family was when they talked to their son when he was transiting back from out west.
When he got back, Dale Carson, you and I talked about this a lot at the time it occurred. Remember when he got back from his trip with Gabby, leaving her body out in dispersed camping to rot? He got all the way home, and didn't the family go camping? Didn't they go? Do you remember that, Jackie? They went to some...
They did. No,
yeah.
they did.
And
unusually so.
The sister was there, and you want to tell me, after saying, burn after reading, call on me, I will show up with a shovel to get rid of the body, that they didn't mention a thing about it around the old campfire?
Well, they had to talk about something.
Yes.
And certainly that was going to be a subject of the conversation. I mean, you've got to know that his behavior was fundamentally different than when he left. Now he's going to be, he is a murderer.
Well, the thing is, I always thought, Dale Carson, that they went, wasn't it something like DeSoto Park? Jackie, wasn't that the name of it? It's like a state facility, campgrounds, picnic grounds near the water. I always believed that they went camping because they wanted to get away from their home, which they probably believed was bugged. That's what I always thought.
And they probably took their cell phones with them.
Yeah. And why? Your son comes home from a camping trip. Do you, as a family, suddenly go to a campsite and sit around the campfire and talk? What?
Well, particularly when the woman that he was so much in love with and stayed with the family for a protracted period of time didn't come back with him. I mean, that's just phenomenal to me. that you would go camping and not in order to get away from prying eyes or neighbors. Because when we did investigations for the Bureau, neighbors were very important. You watch what families do to the neighbors. So they weren't there to have anything overheard, and they could do as they please. And this may be where they formulated the alleged plan for him to leave the country.
Yeah, I remember your theory, and it was a pretty good theory too. Could there be any criminal liability for the mom stating, burn after reading, tell me when to show up, I will be there with a shovel to get rid of the body?
Well, the answer to the question is in 1984, they repealed the misprision of felony in the federal system, which was followed by the states doing the same thing. Misprision of felony is if you know somebody committed a crime and you don't tell law enforcement, you're guilty of a felony as well. And that's gone in our jurisprudence now. So if you see some horrible thing, you're no longer criminally obligated to tell police about it. You can keep your mouth shut. Now, morally, you and I know that's improper. But today, in the law, they have made it so that you don't have to discuss anything at all. So mom doesn't have to say anything about the situation. And what got this case rolling on was the fact that the attorney for the Laundries actually made a statement suggesting that the victim in this case was still alive. Had they not said anything at all to the press, this would not have gone forward. So clearly the Laundries have a leg to stand on in connection with this matter, but it's still a question. It's civil. It is not criminal, nor is it likely to be.
Well, don't you believe that there is some avenue of aiding and abetting in a criminal matter? I mean, burying a dead body is abuse of a corpse. It's tampering with evidence.
Now, well, but you had to take an actual act. So mere words are not sufficient.
Okay, what about conspiracy?
Now, well, let me say this, though. Today, the fact that you can threaten somebody over the internet without the apparent ability to do it is still a crime.
Well, it's because you have not only schemed it, you've taken an overt act, which is required in the law of conspiracy. You can't just say, hey, Jackie, let's rob a bank. I have to actually go get my sawed off and get her in the car and start heading that way. That is an overt act. It doesn't take much to qualify as an overt act. But in this case, writing the letter, in my mind, is an overt act in furtherance of a conspiracy to tamper with a body.
Well, whether the state attorney's office would take that in Florida is questionable, because moms have a unique position with their children, and it was certainly true. Well, certainly true. It was true in the law that we got from England, and that
we call that the common law.
That's right, and the common law is something that allowed moms to help fugitive sons without worrying about it.
That's over.
It certainly is. But if you're given immunity, right? If you're given immunity in a grand jury and you don't tell the truth, there's a problem.
Explain.
Well, I mean, you go in front of a grand jury and the sworn testimony you give, and it turns out to be not true, there's a criminal charge.
The thing is, when you are called to testify, you can take the Fifth. The Fifth Amendment says you do not have a right, you cannot be forced to testify, or a lot of things would equate to testifying. But the law cannot force you to testify against your own interest. But what Dale Carson just said is true. So the state goes, okay, you've got immunity. You have no more Fifth Amendment right to remain silent because we promise we will not prosecute you. That means the target, i.e. the mother of the defendant, no longer has a leg to stand on because she's not going to be prosecuted. Therefore, she can be forced to testify. Now, as a lawyer, I'm fine with that. As a mom, I don't like it at all. And, you know, we
I know
saw
that's right.
in Tot Mom Casey Anthony's case, and I happen to like the Anthony family, Cindy and George Anthony. They've been through hell, Hell, with that daughter of theirs, Tot Mom Casey Anthony, and they're still living without Kelly, the apple of their eye, who was murdered by Tot Mom Casey Anthony. Remember, Cindy Anthony got up on the stand and claimed that those, you know, bombshell computer searches for homemade chloroform, she got up there and took the fall for that. And we all knew she was lying to save her daughter. She did that. So I imagine a lot of moms would lie on the stand. I'm not going to say one way or the other because I don't want it to be used against me in cross-examination one day. That said, Lewinsky's mother did appear before a grand jury and testified under oath. That was the first time it really hit the national headlines that mothers could be forced to testify against their child. So, what do you think about this? Let's just brainstorm for a moment. What about conspiracy to tamper with a corpse? And writing the letter would be the overt act.
Yeah, I could see that. I could see it if there was pressure on the state attorney to bring the case, and that would come from the public outcry that they were allowed to know. And here's the other thing that I don't understand. There's no litigation of the effort that was caused for the searches by all of these government agencies and volunteers to cover their costs. I mean, there's a significant cost if they knew where the decedent was, if they knew where Gabby was, and they didn't say, and we spend all these hundreds of thousands of dollars trying to locate a body that they knew where it was, then, you know, I'm in favor of them having to pay that back.
Guys, in the last hours, Gabby Petito's parents' lawyer renews the request for Brian Laundrie's mother, Rhonda Laundrie's burn after reading letter to her son, allegedly containing an offer from Brian Laundrie's mother to help him bury a body, that she will, quote, lend her son a shovel. So, you know, after all the Petitos have been through, now we hear this. Also, there's a claim, quote, I will get you out of prison. The letter, as Dale stated, was from a backpack found with Laundrie's body, and Laundrie's defense attorney claims it predates the road trip. We'll see. Hey, I'm hearing in my ear we're going into the Murdaugh courtroom. Bye, Dale Carson. Thanks.